The line at JFK International Airport moved slowly, dragging beneath the flickering fluorescence of Terminal 4. Among the swirl of travelers, businessmen, families, and students, a woman stood still, her eyes sweeping across the crowd with the quiet precision of someone who noticed everything. Sarah Trent wore a dark gray hoodie, faded jeans, and well-worn hiking boots. Her backpack, unbranded and slightly scuffed, hung loosely from her shoulder. She was unremarkable at a glance. Not too tall, not too short, not too pretty to raise attention. But her posture spoke of discipline. Her gaze hinted at history, and the faint scar slicing from her right temple to jaw whispered of violence long buried. She reached the front of the line and handed over her American passport without a word. The young customs agent glanced at it, then at her. The photo matched. No red flags on first scan. But something about the woman made him pause. Not fear, exactly, but a ripple of unease, like the moment before a storm breaks. Purpose of travel? He asked. Returning home, Sarah replied. Where have you been? Europe? Several countries. Business or pleasure? Neither. The agent blinked, unsure how to follow up. He glanced at the screen again. Her name, Sarah Trent. Born in Colorado Springs. No criminal record. No flagged status. Still, he checked a box and motioned politely. Step aside for a secondary screening, please. Standard procedure. Sarah didn't argue. She gave a short nod and followed the uniformed officer into a separate line. Behind her, a man in a blue jacket watched, his fingers tapping anxiously against a tablet. But no one noticed. No one ever noticed the watcher's dot inside the inspection room. The atmosphere was colder, both in temperature and tone. A female customs officer waited beside a metal table. Place your backpack here, she said. Sarah obeyed, her movements fluid and calm. Do you have anything to declare? No. The officer opened the backpack. Inside were basic travel items. A paperback novel with creased pages, a phone charger, protein bars, a packet of tissues, a folded change of clothes, and a small leather wallet. She checked each item without comment. Until she reached the wallet. She opened it. At first, it appeared normal. A few bills, some foreign coins, a Colorado driver's license, an expired European Metro pass, and a photo tucked behind a plastic window. The picture showed 3 men and 2 women standing beside a military chopper in a dusty desert base, their faces half shadowed by the sun. The ink was faded, the edges worn, but what made the officer freeze was not the photo. It was what fell beneath it. A small, flat piece of metal slid from the wallet and clinked quietly onto the inspection table. Titanium. Dog tag. The officer picked it up carefully, flipping it over with a gloved hand. Unlike standard issue tags, this one had no blood type, no religious marking, no serial number. Just a burnished gray surface and 6 engraved words. Echo Squadron TS 47 Belay Scathed Officer. Frowned. Is this yours? Sarah looked up, eyes sharp now. That depends who's asking. The agent tilted her head. What does that mean? Sarah didn't reply. She simply held out her hand. The agent didn't return the tag. Instead, she tapped a button under the table, signaling her supervisor. Moments later, the door opened and in stepped Agent Kyle Klein, a senior customs officer with a thinning patch of hair, an old army tattoo hidden beneath his sleeve, and a reputation for taking strange cases seriously. He greeted the female officer briefly, then turned to Sarah. I'm going to need you to come with me, he said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Am I being detained? Not yet, Klein replied. But this, he held up the tag, is going to raise questions you're not ready to answer out here. For a brief second, something passed over Sarah's face. Not fear, something colder. Resignation. She stood without protest, picked up her backpack, and followed Klein down the hallway. They entered a soundproof interview room. Klein shut the door, placed the titanium tag on the table between them, and sat down. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the tag, as if it were a ghost. "Where did you get this?" he finally asked. Sarah leaned back. "Why don't you tell me what you think it is first?" Klein gave a soft, humorless laugh. "I haven't seen a real one of these in over 10 years. Echo Squadron. That's a name I never thought I'd hear again." "Then you know what it means," she said. He nodded slowly. "It means someone opened a door that was supposed to stay shut." Sarah looked him in the eye for the first time. "I need to speak with someone in Homeland. Not local. Not TSA. This goes above your pay grade." Klein didn't respond right away. He just reached under the desk and hit another switch. Down the hall, in a quiet operations room, 2 DHS agents sat upright as an alert blinked red across their screen. Classified code ID. Echo level black. Status active. Inside the small DHS-secured interview room, the air thickened. The titanium dog tag lay between Sarah Trent and Agent Klein like a relic pulled from a grave. Its matte surface, unpolished and scratched by time, seemed to hum with old ghosts. Klein leaned forward, elbows on the table. Echo Squadron didn't just vanish, they were erased. Every record, every operation, classified above top secret. Black tier asset protection. You showing up with this tag is like a ghost walking into the Pentagon unannounced. Sarah's voice was flat. "I didn't want to come back." He tilted his head. "Then why did you?" Sarah exhaled, her fingers unconsciously twitching toward the tag, but she didn't touch it. "Because someone's finishing what started in Kandahar. The last Echo operatives, they're being eliminated. 2 dead in 6 months. 1 missing. I was almost next in Lisbon." Klein processed that. "You're saying someone's hunting Black Ops soldiers?" She nodded once. "Not someone random. Someone with access, resources, intel from inside the system." He stiffened. "Inside?" "That's right. Someone deep. And not just Echo. He's coming for more." A knock interrupted them. The door opened, and 2 Homeland Security agents entered. One tall, square-jawed with eyes like stone, the other shorter and wiry with sharp, clinical movements. The tall one spoke. "Agent Klein, we'll take it from here." Klein glanced at Sarah. "I don't think that wasn't a request." Klein stood slowly. "This woman says she's Sarah Trent, Echo Squadron. You might want to verify that before." The short agent cut him off. "We're already aware." Klein's stomach sank at the cold efficiency in the man's voice. Sarah didn't move, but her gaze locked on the tall agent's badge for a split second. Her eyes narrowed. Then she smiled faintly. "Nice suit," she said. He frowned. "Excuse me? You wore the same kind in Vienna. When you killed Mason Hunt?" The agent flinched barely, but it was enough. Klein saw it. "Who's Mason Hunt?" Sarah answered for him. "My commanding officer, Echo's field leader. Found shot twice in the back of the head last October. They called it suicide. I called it execution." Klein looked at the agents. "You boys got credentials?" They flashed badges. Homeland, seemingly in order. Sarah stood. "Don't let them take me. They're not DHS." The taller agent moved forward, hand at his side. "She's delusional. We have orders to transfer her to DC for immediate debrief." But before he could finish, Sarah moved fast. Her elbow slammed into the shorter agent's throat before the man could react. The taller one reached for his gun, but Klein was faster. He yanked his own service pistol from his holster and aimed squarely at the fake agent's head. "Drop it, now." The man hesitated. Sarah didn't. She kicked the taller agent's knee, then flipped the table with both hands, driving it against his chest. He fell backward. The other man gurgled on the floor, gasping for air. Klein kicked the gun away and cuffed him. "They're not on the registry," he said after a rapid check on his terminal. "They're ghosts." Sarah grabbed her backpack, her breath tight. "They know I'm here. That means more are coming." Klein nodded grimly. "Then we don't have long." Alarms triggered across the secure floor. Emergency protocols sealed. "Down customs. What's the plan?" Klein asked. Sarah opened her backpack and pulled out a small encrypted USB stick and a folded satellite map. "This," she pointed. "Safe house. Upstate New York. Off-grid. I've been storing fragments of evidence from Prague, Bucharest, Milan, the full leak trail. Everything points back to DC, but we need to secure the data first." Klein looked down at the unconscious men. "We'll need a head start." "I have one," she said. "They didn't expect me to survive Portugal." Klein unlocked the back door using his level 4 access badge. They slipped into the restricted baggage handling corridors. Metal crates hummed along conveyor belts. Cargo handlers looked up, confused, but said nothing. "Back route to gate 47? Sarah asked. Klein nodded. "And there's a private clearance vehicle waiting near the executive charter hangars. If we're fast, then move." They sprinted through maintenance tunnels, adrenaline pumping. Sarah moved with surprising speed, her limp reduced to a calculated rhythm. Klein watched her from the corner of his eye. She wasn't just trained. She was something else. Hardened, dangerous, wounded, alive. A voice echoed from the intercom. "All terminals, lock section Delta. Suspects in motion." Security cameras blinked. Above them, Sarah paused at a maintenance panel and popped it open. "Wires." She spliced too quickly. "Covering our tracks," she muttered. Cameras fuzzed, then blacked out. Klein stared. "Who trained you?" Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. At last, they emerged into a dim garage beneath the tarmac. A black SUV idled quietly. "I had this stashed before I flew in," Sarah explained, "just in case." They jumped inside. Klein gunned the engine, tires screeching as they burst onto a service lane. From behind, a black sedan roared in pursuit. Shouts. Gunfire cracked. Klein swerved hard, sending the SUV fishtailing across the empty runway. Sarah opened the glove box and pulled out a silenced Glock. "They want the drive," she said. "They'll burn us to get it." He glanced at her. "What's on that USB?" "Proof," she said. "That echo didn't fail. We were betrayed. And the traitors in Washington." She turned in her seat, aimed, and fired. The tires shrieked as Klein's SUV slid around a fuel truck, barely missing it. The black sedan behind them didn't swerve in time. It clipped the side of the tanker, spinning out of control, sparks flying from under its wheels. Klein glanced in the rearview mirror, just in time to see the vehicle flip and crash into a barrier. Fire bloomed, then smoke. Sarah didn't flinch. She kept her Glock steady on her lap, eyes locked on the road ahead. "Don't slow down," she said. "I wasn't planning to." Klein accelerated through a service gate, smashing through a flimsy security arm and bouncing onto a maintenance road outside the airport perimeter. Behind them, sirens wailed, but no one gave chase. "Not yet. Where's the drive?" he asked. Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled it from an inner pocket. A matte black USB stick sealed in a rubber casing. No markings, no brand. Just a red LED that blinked once every few seconds. Encrypted end-to-end. Double-layer AES and RSA. Only opens with biometric match and the keyword. "What's the keyword?" She looked at him. "You don't need to know." He didn't press. "Not yet. They drove in silence for 10 minutes, city lights shrinking behind them, replaced by cold stretches of empty highway. Finally, Klein spoke again. Let's go back. To the beginning. What happened in Kandahar? Sarah stared out the window for a moment, her face unreadable. Echo was tasked with intercepting a rogue arms shipment linked to a sanctioned NATO commander. Operation Nightglass. We were in and out teams. 5 men, 2 women. Tight, covert, no backup. Intel said. The arms cache was guarded by mercs, small fry. But when we arrived, the place was already blown to hell. Bodies everywhere, like someone had gotten there first. An ambush? She nodded. Only not for us. We weren't the targets. Someone cleaned up a deal gone wrong. Ben left us holding the bodies. 20 minutes later, 2 drones locked. On. No warning. Airstrike. They said it was a mistake. Friendly fire. But someone had to authorize the coordinates. Someone who knew where we were. Mason Hunt took the first hit. I barely made it out. Klein shook his head. You were marked as Kia. Exactly, she said. I took the hint. I disappeared. Europe, mostly. Stayed off-grid. No electronics, no banking trail. But then last year, I got a message. What kind of message? A burner phone showed. Up at my hotel in Estonia. No return number. Just a photo. She reached into her backpack and handed Klein a printed photo. Old school, glossy, freshly creased. It showed a man in civilian clothes, slumped on a park bench, a bullet wound visible. Just below the collarbone. A titanium dog tag clutched in his left hand. Elias Groves. Echo's recon lead. He was supposed to be in Argentina under a new name. I knew the photo was a warning. Then came more messages. More bodies. I started hunting. Klein looked at her, his voice low. Why not go to the agency? Sarah laughed bitterly. The agencies who erased us, or someone inside it. I wasn't going to walk into Langley and ask who wanted me dead. I needed evidence first. She tapped the USB. Now I have it. And what does it prove? Sarah hesitated. Echo was silenced because we stumbled into something we weren't meant to see. A pipeline, military-grade arms being funneled through backdoor routes by a U.S. defense contractor. The buyers weren't just foreign black market dealers. They were American allies. Quiet deals, illegal ops, and a handful of generals getting paid under the table. Echo was sent to disrupt a deal that was never supposed to be stopped. Klein's grip on the wheel tightened. You're telling me this goes all the way up? She nodded. Higher than you think. They were almost out of New York now. Road signs flashing by. Terrytown, then Sleepy Hollow. The forest thickened. Fog crept along the asphalt. Sarah checked her phone. A basic model. Earner grade. No GPS. No signals, she confirmed. Good. What's next? Klein asked. I show you the data. But not here. Too exposed. The car turned down a dirt road, headlights bouncing. Along the tree line. After 10 minutes of winding silence, a cabin appeared in the woods. Small, stone-walled, ivy-covered. A single chimney rose from the roof. There were no lights, no other buildings for miles. The place felt like it had been waiting for them. They parked out back and stepped inside. The interior was clean, sparse. Emergency rations, water containers, solar-powered battery packs. A fireplace filled the room with warmth. Sarah pulled out a satchel and placed it on the wooden table. She opened it. Inside were files, photos, hard drives, a treasure trove of buried sins. Klein flipped through some of the documents. CI, briefing papers with redacted names. Surveillance photos from multiple countries. Financial records connecting shell companies to Department of Defense subcontractors. Then came a name Klein Recognized. General Raymond Halverse. Sarah watched his face. You know him? Everyone in Washington knows Halverse. He's a decorated hero, currently being considered for Secretary of Defense. Sarah leaned forward. He's the pipeline, the arms run. The intel confirms it. Klein looked at her. If what she said was true, it was treason on a level not seen in decades. Before he could speak, a noise outside drew their attention. Sarah grabbed her Glock again. Klein reached for his sidearm. Then came a second noise. The distinct thump of boots on gravel. Sarah whispered, "They found us." The wind howled softly through the forest trees, swaying branches like skeletal fingers across the cabin roof. Inside, Sarah and Klein crouched behind the thick wooden table, weapons ready. Outside, boots crunched on gravel, steady, confident. Not amateurs. Whoever was coming wasn't sneaking. They wanted to be heard. Klein whispered, "How many?" Sarah peered through the corner of the curtained window. 3. Tactical gear. Suppressors. No visible IDs. He cursed under his breath. Not FBI, not military. No, she said. Private contractors. Klein squinted. Mercs? Sarah nodded. Off books. Same type that cleaned up in Serbia and Kiev. Always one step behind me, until now. Another footstep. Closer. Then silence. They were flanking the cabin. Klein whispered, "There a back door?" Sarah motioned toward the fireplace. Trap hatch under the hearth. Emergency. Exit route. As Klein moved toward it, the front door suddenly exploded inward, with a battering boom splinters flying like shrapnel. A flashbang rolled inside. Sarah grabbed Klein and threw them both behind the stone fireplace as the device detonated, blinding. Light and a concussive burst shaking the walls. Muffled voices shouted commands. Clear left. 2 down behind cover. Secure the drive. Sarah moved fast, quicker than Klein could track. She slid the USB into a pouch at her waist, then pivoted out of cover and fired twice. One merc fell backward, hit clean through the neck. Another ducked, returned fire. Bullets tore through the wooden beams. Klein found his gun, aimed low, and fired at the legs beneath the table. Another attacker screamed, falling forward with a shot-up shin. That made 2 down. The last one retreated, dropping. A smoke canister. "We have to move," Sarah said, coughing. "Go." Klein shouted. They dropped through the trapdoor, slamming it behind them. The narrow tunnel beneath the cabin was damp, lined with stone and old wiring. It led 20 yards into the woods. They emerged near a crumbling root cellar, camouflaged. Beneath pine needles, Klein emerged coughing, pale. "You've done this before." "I designed it," Sarah muttered. "For situations exactly like this." Gunfire echoed faintly behind them. The mercs were inside, but they wouldn't stay long. And Sarah knew they wouldn't leave without torching the place. As they ran through the woods, Klein asked between breaths, "How did Echo start? What were you really doing?" Sarah slowed just enough to speak. "Echo wasn't officially listed anywhere. We didn't exist. Formed post 9/11s, after the second intelligence collapse in Syria. Our unit handled high-risk, zero-visibility missions operations so classified, even the CIA didn't log them. We worked off the books, outside U.S. jurisdiction. We had full autonomy." "You were assassins?" "No, we were erasers," she said. "When someone left footprints the government didn't want traced, Echo cleaned it up. They stopped at a clearing near a shallow stream. A rusted truck sat half covered in moss, but still functional. Klein pointed to it. "You sure that still runs?" Sarah smiled faintly. "It's not about if it runs. It's if it's trackable. That's a no." They jumped in. Sarah hotwired the ignition. the engine sputtering to life after a groan. As they pulled away, smoke curled into the sky. Behind them, Klein watched the black plume rise. "That was evidence back there. I memorized most of it," she said. The files were just a backup. They drove west, through broken roads and forgotten counties. After an hour, they pulled over behind an abandoned gas station. Klein looked at her. "I saw Havers speak in D.C. last year. He was talking about protecting American integrity, patriotism." Sarah snorted. "He's a patriot all right, just not to this country." She pulled out a torn notebook from her bag. Inside were coordinates, names, shipment manifests. She pointed. "See this code? It's traced to Havers' private foundation. Supposedly, a veterans outreach initiative. But that foundation also owns a holding company that signed security contracts with a Romanian arms dealer." Klein's brow furrowed. "That's a money tunnel." "Exactly," she said. Arms moved from U.S. black sites into Eastern Europe, then funneled back to allies under the guise of foreign aid. They inflate the numbers, skim off the top, and resell what's left to militants. It's a profit machine. And when Echo stumbled on one of their staging hubs in Kandahar, Havers pulled the plug, and the government bought the story. Hook, line, and drone strike. Klein rubbed his face, trying to grasp the depth. "So why now? Why come forward after all this?" "Time?" Sarah stared out the window. "Because I was tired of surviving while the others died. Because someone needs to blow the whistle from the inside. And because last month I found something else." She opened her burner phone and showed him a video dot in it. A man sat in a glass conference room, speaking to an off-screen voice. His face was partially shadowed, but clear enough to recognize. General Havers. His voice came through clean. Echo was never meant to last. They were useful until they weren't. Make sure there are no more names left on the list. Klein's jaw dropped. "How the hell did you get this?" Sarah's tone was quiet. "An old contact in Vienna. He died 2 days later." She turned the phone off. "The only way I stay alive is to go public. Fast. And if we go to the press, they'll spin it as disinformation. Maybe even frame me. So what's the move?" Sarah looked at him. "There's someone in Langley I trust. Barely. We leak the evidence to her. Let her decide who to bring in." Klein took a deep breath. "You sure she's clean?" "No," Sarah said. "But if I'm wrong, we won't live to regret it." From behind the station, tires crackled on gravel. Sarah looked up sharply. "Did you hear that?" Klein raised his pistol. "We've got company again." Klein crouched low behind the rotted fuel pump, his pistol steady, his breath shallow. The sound of crunching gravel grew louder, then stopped. Silence. Sarah leaned against the rusted truck, Glock drawn, listening. She had trained for moments like this: ambushes, reversals, tight exits. But nothing trained her for surviving when your own government wanted you gone. 2 sets of footsteps, she whispered. Heavy. Trained. More of Havers' cleanup crew? Maybe. Or worse agency. Freelancers. They waited, still as statues. Then shouting. A voice barked into a radio. Target vehicles still warm. Perimeter scan. They're close. Klein and Sarah moved together without a word, slipping into the nearby woods under the cover of pine branches and long-forgotten shadows. The night swallowed them. After 30 minutes of weaving through tangled brush and overgrowth, they reached a roadside drainage tunnel. Sarah knelt at the edge and checked the air. Clear. They dropped inside, crawling for 20 feet before emerging behind a ridge. Only then did Klein finally speak. Why you, Sarah? Out of all of Echo, why are you still alive? She sat back against a rock and looked up at the moonlit sky. Because I saw it coming. Klein raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I was Echo's intelligence lead. I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but I was the one who always checked. Twice. I started noticing changes before Kandahar reassignments. Code mismatches, satellite pings that didn't match our comms logs. When Hunt died, I found the directive it had Echo's termination coded into it. They were never going to let us. Walk away, and you went dark, went black, she corrected. Disappeared, started digging. I knew if I lived long enough, I'd find proof. Klein looked at her more closely now, seeing the lines beneath her eyes, the tension behind. Every word. You lost people, he said. I lost everyone, she replied. Echo wasn't a squad. We were family. Mason Hunt, Elias Groves, Tanya Morgan. All dead. Not because we failed, but because we knew too much. Klein ran a hand through his hair. You know what happens if this reaches the wrong ears? Same. Thing that's already happening, except next time. No one makes it out. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the titanium tag again. This? It's not a relic. It's a key. I embedded part of the decryption code into the alloy. Biometrics and metal memory. Combine it with the USB and one more key I buried in Virginia. Then the full dossier unlocks. Virginia? Fort Beaver. Old Echo drop site. Hidden under a fake foundation. Klein nodded slowly. We're driving into a hornet's nest. She gave him a grim smile. Better to walk into it than wait to be stung. They stole a car that night from an abandoned Restapa dented silver sedan. Dusty, but fueled. By dawn, they were on the highway again, weaving through back roads, staying off-grid. Klein drove while Sarah watched the road behind through the side mirror. You ever work intelligence? She asked. I was Army, he replied. 15 years. Then I moved to Customs and Border. Thought it'd be quiet work. Guess not. She studied him. And why'd you help me back there? Klein didn't answer at first. Because I remember what it was like to serve with people you trusted more than family. And I remember how it felt the day I found out one of our own sold us out. I never. Got to make it right. This is my shot. Sarah nodded in understanding. The drive stretched across hours and states, the landscape slowly shifting into the green hills of Virginia. By sunset, they arrived near Fort Beaver. Sarah directed Klein off the main road, through a narrow gravel path winding into the woods. They stopped at a rusted gate, overgrown with vines. Here? Klein asked. Sarah stepped out. Yeah, we used it during Echo's stateside training. Ops, it was written off years ago as condemned. They pushed through the gate and walked another half-mile to what looked like the ruins of a foundation, chunks of cement, steel rods poking from the earth. But Sarah knew better. She knelt beside a moss-covered stone and pulled it away, revealing a biometric panel. She pressed her thumb to the scanner. A red light blinked, then turned green. With a soft rumble, a concealed hatch in the ground slid open. Inside was a staircase leading into darkness. Klein followed without hesitation. They descended into a steel-walled chamber, once a storage bunker, now forgotten. Sarah moved to a shelf, pulling free a sealed steel case. She opened it. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, was the second P, a fiber-coated authentication card laced with Sarah's DNA markers. She smiled for the first time in days. This is it, she said. She inserted the card into a portable decryptor, and then the USB drive. The machine beeped, screen flickering to life. Files spilled across the screen: communications logs, mission briefings, bank transfers, encrypted correspondences. A buried truth too large to hide any longer. But before they could dive deeper, a warning flashed. Unauthorized tracking signal detected. Coordinates traced. Active ping. Sarah's eyes widened. They tracked the decryption. How? She looked at the card. It was never supposed to activate a signal, unless someone knew the encryption was being broken. Then, from above, they heard the whine of a helicopter approaching. Klein cursed. They're here. Sarah grabbed the drive, the card, and the tag. We move. Now. From the darkness, red lights blinked on. They had company. A red laser dot crawled silently across the cement wall. Klein spotted it first, grabbing Sarah by the wrist and yanking her into cover just as a bullet shattered the screen of the decryptor. Sparks flew. The room plunged into half darkness. There, already in the bunker, Sarah hissed, drawing her weapon. Klein clicked off the safety on his sidearm. This isn't a retrieval. This is a kill mission. No time for regret. No time for panic. They'd trained for this even if it had been years. The mission never ended. They moved as one, shifting between pillars of shadow and steel. Heart steady, eyes sharp. 3 entries, Sarah whispered. 2 up top, 1 rear shaft emergency escape. They'll block the stairs first. Then we give them someone to block, Klein said, then nodded toward the back corridor. Sarah ran. Klein stayed. Seconds later, gunfire echoed through the bunker. From above, voices shouted, "She's in the tunnel! Move in!" Klein fired twice, catching one of the masked men in the thigh. Another fired back, grazing his shoulder. He ducked, bit down on the pain, and ran toward the opposite end. Diversion successful. Sarah crawled through the ventilation tunnel, heart hammering. She clutched the titanium dog-tagged USB drive and fiber card against her chest like sacred items. Echo's final truth exposed too early, yet finally real. Tunnel ended behind a utility shed half a mile from the bunker. She emerged into thick brush, breathing hard. A black drone buzzed overhead, sweeping its thermal lens. She slid into a ditch, covering herself with leaves and mud, holding her breath as the drone passed over. Back in the bunker, Klein ducked into an ammo room and shoved a pipe into a crack in the gas line. He reached for a striker. He whispered, "Sorry, boys," and struck. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough. Concrete crumbled. Flames licked the ceiling. Screams echoed through the stairwell. Klein staggered out, coughing, covered in soot, bleeding and limping. He ran. Sarah had reached the car by the time Klein stumbled through the trees. She pulled him in and hit the gas. Tires kicked up gravel. They sped down the old service road. Flames in the rearview mirror. Klein groaned. "How bad?" "You'll live," she muttered, tying off his arm with a belt. "You get it?" She nodded. "All of it. But now they know we have it." Klein glanced at her. "Then we need to tell someone who matters." She shook her head. "No one in command can be trusted." "Not anymore." "Then who?" Sarah hesitated, then said, "There's someone, former NSA. He went rogue 5 years ago. Been helping whistleblowers disappear. He'll know what to do." Klein sighed. "What's the catch?" "We need to find him before they find us." They ditched the car in a swamp near Quantico and hiked 3 miles, through back roads to a rural motel that hadn't seen fresh paint in 20 years. Inside, Sarah broke out an encrypted satellite uplink from a hidden pouch in her jacket. She typed a message into the console. "Echo Asset A7. Contact required. Phoenix Protocol. Response Delta 3. Seconds later, a reply came. "Safe House, Baltimore. Burn in 48 HRS. Move now." "Baltimore," she said aloud. Klein groaned. "I was hoping for somewhere warm." They hit the road again by midnight, this time disguised as a rideshare couple. Klein wore a hoodie to cover his bandage. Sarah dyed her hair dark and wore glasses. The drive was quiet, tense. They reached the safe house by dawn. It was an abandoned row home in the West End, boarded windows and broken fences camouflaging its purpose. Inside, everything changed. Modern equipment, satellite arrays, steel-reinforced doors. Waiting for them was a man with sharp eyes and a face like stone. Gray beard, no smile. "Trent," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again?" "Didn't think I'd have to come back," she replied. "Who's he?" "Klein. He saved my life." The man, codenamed Granger, nodded. "That counts." Sarah laid out the USB, tag, and fiber key. Granger examined them. "You decrypted this?" "Partially," she said, "before they came. We need to finish it." Granger connected the hardware into an air-gapped server. Files began to load. It wasn't just military logs. It was evidence of illegal operations, assassinations, private mercenary deals, arms trades authorized by shadow departments. Inside the U.S. intelligence apparatus, one file chilled them both. Echo Black Cleanse. Initiated targets: Hunt, Groves, Morgan, Trent. And below that, Klein, observe only. Status, redundant. "They were watching you, too," Sarah whispered. Klein swallowed hard. "I was a loose end." Sarah clenched her fists. This wasn't about silencing Echo. It was about hiding what Echo discovered. "We stumbled into something much bigger." Granger narrowed his eyes. "Then it's time to go public." "But it's incomplete," she said. "We need the last passcode, the one Mason hid in Zurich." Klein's head turned. "Zurich?" Sarah nodded. "He told me once, if anything happened, check the chapel under the old code name. ECHO's Covenant?" Granger stepped back. "You leave in 2 hours. And take this." He handed her a backup drive. "If I go down, this doesn't." As Sarah and Klein packed up, Granger stood by the window, peering out into the light rain. He murmured to himself, "They thought Echo was buried. They thought wrong." Far above, in a satellite control room across the country, a red light blinked. On target acquired, priority. Terminate before Eliak Ave. Hunt wasn't over. It has begun. Zurich's sky was overcast, the clouds hanging low as if pressing secrets into the cobbled streets. Sarah and Klein arrived separately, using false documents and untraceable burner phones. The chapel they sought sat near Lake Zurich, quiet, old and mostly forgotten, just as Mason had described years ago. Sarah pushed open the heavy oak door. Inside, pews sat silent under stained glass. The scent of candle wax and old wood filled the air. She approached the altar, her fingers trembling. Beneath the altar was a wooden panel marked with the engraving, "Covenant Holds." She pried it open. Inside sat a flash drive and a laminated card with 6 digits, 935247. Klein, standing watch outside, noticed 2 men across the street pretending to check a newspaper dispenser. A third leaned against a parked car, too still for a tourist. "Found us," he muttered. Sarah emerged from the chapel just as Klein said, "Go now." "We're not walking out together." "No," she said firmly. "We stay together or we're both dead." He pulled her behind a street vendor's cart as gunshots cracked through the air. Pedestrians screamed. Chaos erupted. The fake tourists drew weapons and charged. Klein fired back, covering Sarah as she darted into a metro entrance. They jumped a turnstile and vanished into the underground. In a hidden server room, beneath a Zurich safe house owned by an old intelligence ally of Granger's. Sarah plugged in the flash drive and entered the code. The files decrypted. What they found went beyond Black Ops. It exposed a private contractor named Helios Corps, run by ex-CIA and DoD figures. Echo Squadron had stumbled upon Helios's operations in Eastern Europe, operations involving unauthorized drone strikes, political manipulation, and civilian deaths covered up as terrorist incidents. Helios had been feeding false intel to multiple agencies for years to provoke conflict and inflate defense contracts. And now, Helios had a new mission. Eliminate all Echo members to preserve deniability. I need to leak this, Sarah said. Klein nodded. But not to just anyone. The press won't run it. Most outlets are tied in. Sarah stared at the screen. There's someone. Her name is Kate Ramos. She used to be at the Times. Went freelance after her expose on Phoenix Labs got spiked. She's clean. Klein raised an eyebrow. If she's clean, she's already being watched. We have no choice. Sarah encrypted the files again, this time with a 2-key access system, one for her, one to be sent to Kate separately through an anonymous courier. Meanwhile, they prepared to leave Zurich before nightfall, but Helios was already moving. In Langley, Virginia, a Helios handler named Briggs read the decrypted signal bounce through Switzerland. They've got the archive, he said into the phone. And they're heading for New York. Orders came cold and fast. Terminate. Number. Delays. On a private jet secured through Granger's old network, Sarah and Klein flew back toward the U.S. At 30,000 feet, Sarah sat silently, eyes on the clouds. Klein dozed lightly, pistol holstered under his jacket. Halfway through the flight, a flight attendant entered the cabin with a smile. Would you like something to... She moved too quickly. Klein's instincts kicked in. He reached for his weapon, but she was faster, knife already drawn. Sarah shoved the tray table up into the woman's gut, sending her backward. Klein fired once clean shot. The woman collapsed. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. What's going on back there? Sarah grabbed the intercom. Emergency. Secure the cabin. Someone got through security. They tied the woman's hands and searched her. She carried no ID, just a syringe and a micro-camera lens embedded in her earring. She wasn't alone, Sarah said. Check the cockpit. But the pilot's voice cracked again. We're rerouting. They've ordered us to land in Boston, said there's a federal request. No way. Klein muttered. Sarah bolted into the cockpit. The pilot was calm but scared. They threatened my family, he whispered. I'm sorry. Sarah took the controls. We're not going to Boston. She veered the jet south. Hours later, they landed at a rural airstrip in Pennsylvania. Granger met them in a beat-up truck. You've stirred the hornet's nest now. They tried to kill us. On a plane, Klein said. They're not even hiding it anymore. Sarah handed Granger a duplicate drive. Get this to Ramos. Use the courier network. No digital. Granger nodded. It'll take 48 hours. Sarah turned to Klein. Then we've got 48 hours to survive. Back in D.C., Helios was preparing their final move. Briggs met with a shadowy panel of officials. Leak protocol is in motion. We believe the press drop is imminent. An older man in a suit said coldly, Then this must be contained? This goes beyond Echo. If those files go public, we all burn. Briggs left the room and tapped a secured message into his phone. Final phase approved. Terminate Trent plus Klein. Location. Pending. At that very moment, Sarah and Klein, now holed up in a Pennsylvania barn, patched up wounds and reloaded gear. Do you think it's worth it? Klein asked, eyes on the rain outside. If we don't do this, Sarah replied, then Echo died for nothing. He nodded, quiet. Then let's finish what they started. Outside, headlights flared in the woods. The final showdown had begun. Rain pelted the roof of the old Pennsylvania barn like ticking seconds on a war drum. Inside, Sarah adjusted the shoulder strap of her rifle, peeking through a crack in the wooden slats. The headlights had stopped just beyond the tree line. Too quiet. Too deliberate. They're staging, she whispered to Klein. He was loading mags with practiced calm, sweat dotting his brow. 10 minutes, maybe less. Granger's warning echoed in her head. If they corner you, they won't arrest. They'll erase you. Outside, shadows moved. 3, maybe 4 operatives in tactical gear fanned out silently. These weren't FBI. They were Helios hunters, silent off-book, and trained to kill ghosts. Sarah gritted her teeth. We hold them off until the courier confirms Ramos got the files. Klein looked up. And then what? We disappear again. A loud crack echoed. Not thunder. Gunfire. The barn door splintered as bullets tore through it. Klein returned fire from aloft, while Sarah darted behind stacked hay bales. She clipped one shooter in the leg, dropping him with a cry. Another flanked from the rear window. She spun and fired point blank, the air filled with smoke and grit. Wood chips, dirt, and sparks lit the night. Then came the whine of a suppressed rifle. Klein shouted in pain and dropped to his knees, a bullet grazing his thigh. Sarah dragged him behind a tractor, her own breath ragged. Stay down, she said, slipping him her backup pistol. From her belt, she pulled the emergency flare. Not to call for help, but to draw every gun to her location. She struck it. Red smoke filled the barn like blood in water. Through the haze, she stood tall. Come and get me. A Helios agent moved fast, but not fast enough. Sarah shot first. Another ducked behind a barrel. Klein, despite the pain, fired a clean shot from below. Silence returned. Temporary, breathless silence. Then a soft ding on Sarah's burner phone. One word from Granger. Delivered. The files had reached Kate Ramos. The truth, Echo's story, the Helios corruption, the names. It was all in her hands now. Sarah exhaled. For a second, it felt like victory. But outside, a low hum began to rise. Not a car. A drone. They're escalating, Klein said. No loose ends. The drone dropped low. Attached was a small cylindrical device. Incendiary, Sarah realized. They're going to burn everything. She grabbed Klein, dragging him toward the storm shelter hatch under the barn floor. With seconds to spare, she kicked it open and rolled them in. Above, fire swallowed the barn. Flames burst through wood, consuming everything. Smoke funneled skyward. From the woods, Briggs watched through binoculars, cold and satisfied. Confirmed visual, he said into the headset. Target site neutralized. But the storm shelter held. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky in bruised gold, Sarah and Klein emerged from the scorched wreckage, coughing but alive. News exploded globally by mid-morning. Whistleblower leaks classified files. Black Ops. Unit uncovered. Private defense firm linked to war crimes. Former intelligence agents break. Silence on rogue operations. Ramos had done it. The files made it to a secure network, verified, and published to multiple outlets. Names, dates, photos, contracts, undeniable. In Washington, the House of Cards began to fall. Congress launched emergency hearings. Helios executives were subpoenaed. Briggs disappeared from the grid. Echo Squadron was spoken aloud on national television for the first time in a decade. But Sarah didn't watch the news. She and Klein stood in front of 5 gravestones in a quiet field, the resting place of their fallen teammates. Trent placed the titanium dog tag gently at the foot of one. We kept our promise. She whispered. Klein said nothing, just placed a hand on her shoulder. Then, from the trees, a figure stepped forward. Granger, you're not safe, he said. Even now. I know, Sarah replied. But we had to tell the truth. Granger nodded. They'll come looking. This won't be over for a long time. Sarah smirked, tucking a small drive into her jacket. Then they'd better be ready, because we've still got more to say. With that, the 3 disappeared into the trees. Echo Squadron. once erased from history, had left a mark the world would never forget. And Sarah Trent, a ghost who came back from the dead, had finally come home.